To succeed with your startup, you must persuade investors, advisors, customers, and other potential partners to join you on your journey. And yes, it can be intimidating to stand up in front of a room and share your vision, your hard work, your startup. Well, our guest is going to put your fears at ease by showing you how to win money, win mentors, and more with your startup. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Show. I'm your host, Andy Lyons, startup coach to first-time founders. After raising 4 businesses of my own, I now help newly minted founders and owners sleep through the night. Using my Andylicious strategies, solutions, insights, and inspiration, founders are building profitable and sustainable businesses without spending a fortune and wasting valuable time. And guess what? We are streaming live right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, thanks to the oh-so-delicious StreamYard platform. And I am delighted you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game. Those of you tuning in live, please introduce yourselves in the comment thread. Let folks know where you're hailing from and share your business name and website, because this is a networking event, really, okay? Use this opportunity to expand your network, connect with each other on LinkedIn, and follow each other on social media, because you never know where the next collaboration will come from. Your questions and comments are always important, so please pop them into the comment threads during our conversation, and we'll do our best to answer them live. And if you know someone who would benefit from our conversation, please share this live stream link on your social media feed so other folks can tune in and join us. Thank you. Because the theme of the Startup Life Show is a problem shared is a problem halved. So I'm just going to say a little howdy do to folks here, just to say hi to good morning, April, sunny Knoxville, Tennessee. Yay! Good to see you today. And Natalia, always so happy to see you. She's my marketing coordinator, folks. So it's always nice to say hi to her, because when do we get to see each other anymore, right? Okay, so I want to tell you about our phenomenal guest today, Debi Kleiman, and she's going to show us how to be prepared for our next pitch event. Debi is an award-winning marketer, teacher, startup advisor, mentor, and angel investor with over 15 years of experience working with and coaching startups of all kinds, especially in her current role as executive director of the Arthur M. Blank Center for Entrepreneurship at Babson College, which, by the way, is the nation's #1 school for entrepreneurship right here outside of my hometown of Boston. Debi's also the best-selling author of First Pitch, where founders learn ideal strategies and pathways to get investors and other key startup influencers to take notice and jump on board. You can see it right there. Let's get together and give Debi a huge round of applause, bringing her in here to the full screen. Yay, Debi!
Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
I know. I like to get out the clappers, because we're not in front of a room, so I've got to bring in the clapping.
Yeah, I got to bring in the energy.
I know, exactly. I am so thrilled you're here. Let's say hi to a few more folks, and I'll pull up all your scoop down here at the bottom on the banner and say hi. Oh, Diane, how are you? So great to see you. Diane has an amazing business, Debi, PhotoPad, and she's out of Seattle. I've known her for years. I mean, we met on Twitter, my favorite bar, like maybe 8 years ago. And let's say hi to a new friend who's doing some exciting things right here in the Boston area. Hi, Maxwell Murray, research and design, especially in ed tech. Awesome. That's how you do it, folks. That's how you network and say hi. Wonderful. And connect with Maxwell Murray Jr. on LinkedIn, and everybody, again, get to know each other. All right. So before we start getting into all the pitch details, Debi, let's stroll down memory lane a little bit and talk about your background, because you came from a serious, large corporate, and as you called it, classically trained brand marketing.
Yeah.
Even. So tell us a little bit how you landed in that world and built that up over the years.
Sure. So I went to very large consumer packaged goods companies after I got my MBA. And the reason why I did that was because I've always had a fascination with how people buy and why. I really wanted to understand the psychology of it. I really wanted to participate in the creation of products that people really love. And so for me, marketing was a real draw, and I really wanted a career in marketing. And the best way at the time, now this was a long time ago, was to go into these large consumer packaged goods like Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and be part of their classical brand management training programs. And it was like getting another MBA. It was, you were getting the entire spectrum of learning how to market products in a really effective way on the job, and you were doing it live, and you were sort of rotating around in different parts of the company.
And you were getting paid?
And you were getting paid, so versus paying someone else. And it was phenomenal. I loved it. And I really fell into, within these companies, I fell into an innovation role. And I spent most of my time in these big companies developing new products and launching new products. So I had always had this, taste for innovation, this sort of entrepreneurial spirit of wanting to create new. So it was interesting that spirit really began working for these very large companies and getting to launch new products and talking to consumers a lot and really understanding, what motivates them to buy or what problems in their lives needed to be solved that potentially we could solve with our products.
And I don't know how you held yourself back because, if you're a marketing person, and just think of the exercises that we had to do getting our MBAs, right?
Yeah.
And now you're working for a huge CPG company and you're going deep and you're like, well, I could make a better hairspray, or I could make a better this, or I could make a better laundry detergent, and I'd brand it this way if it were mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was really the impetus to leave, was that I had all these ideas that I really wanted to pursue on my own and really kind of, be more a little bit of a opportunity to control my own destiny, and fail or succeed, it would be on my shoulders. So that is sort of why I walked away from that and went into the startup world, because I really wanted to build things. I love building new things
and solving problems.
See,
that is the core ingredient, everybody, to being a founder. Is you gotta love to solve problems, because there are so many.
Well, related to that is this idea of being able to identify an insight that nobody else has. So the definition of an insight is something that's non-obvious. And the best startups key into an insight that nobody else had and then executes on that insight really, really well. So maybe they see an intersection of trends in think about Uber, transportation and urban living, and who saw the trend for Uber. Right. So it's related to this idea, founders want to build things, but the founders that find an insight that's really unique and build their startup around that usually have great success.
Yeah, and they can think outside the box, so they see what's coming. Mm-hmm. And of course, as you know, one of the biggest reasons why a startup will fail is timing. So sometimes you see what's coming on the horizon, but it's going to be about 10 years. I interviewed a guy who had a wonderful workout chip for running ready to go on the phones, but he had to wait for Motorola and everybody to turn that GPS feature on. And it took them years to do that. So anyway, little side.
So true. Definitely. No, we worked on an idea that was way before its time, and eventually became something very big. So, it is partially about timing, that you really nail it right when it's
the vision, meets the need, etc. But, you also helped us out here by being on the Governor's Council, the creative economy. Mm-hmm. That just seems just so far-fetched that a government would have a council for creative economy. How did that happen?
Well, this was when Governor Deval Patrick was in office. And at the time I was running the Massachusetts Innovation and Technology Exchange. I was the president of that organization. And it was a trade organization that was about really promoting Boston area innovation, digital innovation in particular. So tech companies that were building the next big thing, whether it was a startup or Akamai and Microsoft, and putting all those people together and helping them work together and network. And so I was very involved at the time with sort of promoting Boston as an innovation hub and bringing people together, and particularly taking the startup community at that time to a new place. There was a whole group of us that were very connected in doing this work.
What year was this, Debbie? Because were you one of the reasons, and thank goodness for Governor Patrick, that this happened, or?
Well, I think that, this group of us who were working on it, this was the time when Mass Challenge was born. This was the time when Techstars Boston started. This is the time when the Innovation District kind of became the Innovation District. Mayor Menino had this idea that it would be the Innovation District, this set of neighborhoods. So it really was kind of a point in time for the Boston area innovation ecosystem where we were changing and we were trying to come together as a community to not only promote the region for the companies that were here and the jobs, but also to find great founders to build the next big thing. So like at the time, HubSpot was just kind of ramping up and becoming really well known, and now it's a phenomenal, really well known company.
I remember when they were in the incubator.
So there are a bunch of these companies that I got to work with when they were really young and just starting out. And so the Creative Economy Council kind of came out of Governor Patrick's desire to further raise the profile of Boston and Massachusetts as a place where innovation happens, a place where innovation is welcome, and to really sort of bring all the assets that we had here just naturally in terms of the number of students and
it worked.
Tech, and it worked. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff we were doing.
We go back and forth, everyone, with Silicon Valley as number one for startup and innovation. Just saying. Well, Debbie, thank you for being part of that. I just want to say hi. Yay, Eunice, you're going to be here in Boston in 2 weeks. Woohoo! Where are you going to be? What you doing here? I love that. So exciting. And we have Taylor. Hold on, I want to just grab. Hey, Taylor. So nice to meet you. Oh my gosh. Taylor, founder of SUS, which is a company with a goal to remove and reduce waste from landfills.
That's a good goal.
That is a wonderful goal.
Where does it go?
Yeah, we're going to need more details. You may need to come on the show and tell me all about it, okay? And tell everybody. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. All right. And Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. All this beautiful design work is thanks to Nikki, who lives in the Cotswolds. She lives in the Cotswolds, okay? So every day she steps out of her home. Oh my gosh, you should see the beautiful photos. Everyone follow Nikki on Twitter so you can see the beauty that is surrounding her. And again, thank you for all your beautiful design work for Startup Life, Nikki. Hey, okay, so just a quick hi to folks there. So now you're transitioning. How did you get picked up? I say picked up, that's what a lingo. How did you end up at Babson's wonderful Center for Entrepreneurship as the executive director?
Yeah, well, so for me, one of my favorite parts of the work that I did for the Massachusetts Innovation and Technology Exchange was the work I got to do with startups. I had been in a couple startups before that. I'd worked in startups as part of founding teams and loved the environment. And then through, and I love the ride and all the craziness that went with it, and certainly building things, as I've mentioned already. While I was running my techs, we created this incredible mentorship program for startups in Boston. And through that, I started working with a lot of the accelerators in Boston, like Mass Challenge and Techstars and some of the other ones, the Harvard iLab. And just this passion for working with early stage founders just made me so happy. And it felt so great. I felt like we were making progress and I felt like I could really help them. And I joined a bunch of startup boards and invested in a few companies, and just the community in Boston's so much fun, and I just really love that work. But in between going to Babson and leaving Mitex, I went and ran a very large media agency here in the Boston area. It's part of a huge conglomerate, global company.
You stepped up. You stepped up as the chief executive goddess.
Yes. So I had 170 media professionals in Boston. We were working with massive clients like Fidelity and Emirates Airlines, and I'm trying to think what else off the top of my head. I wanted to do that work because there was a real need to bring startups into that world. The digital media landscape was changing really quickly. There were all these really interesting ad tech startups, and that's why I wanted to do that role, was to sort of see how we could bring those two worlds together. And I found that I just really missed startup life. I really missed being around founders. I really missed the building part. And so I heard about the role at Babson, actually from my sister, who is an adjunct professor there. She teaches business law, and she's also an alum. And so she heard about the role. The person who had been running the Entrepreneurship Center was retiring, and they were looking for a new executive to run it. And someone who was going to sort of take it to the next level. You know, things around entrepreneurship were really changing. Babson had been leading the way for over 25 years, and we weren't about to give up our crown. So, they really
needed a woman in this role.
They needed someone to really take it to the next level, and
take it to the next level, of course.
And of course, all my connections and the network that I have in Boston is a really valuable thing to be able to bring to these students at Babson. So that's how I originally heard about it, and then, went through the process. It's funny because I had always wanted to be at Babson. I always had wanted to teach, but I thought it would come later in my life, later in my career, when I was like going to slow down, but that didn't actually happen. And, it's funny how life goes. Sometimes it comes when you don't expect it, and you got to grab it. You just got to grab it.
Absolutely. And I love that you can take that huge, large corporate point of view. I mean, folks, when you look at the life projection of a business, right? All it's like relationships, frankly. You've got all that yummy, deliciousness that happens in the first 18 months, right? But then, the business has to go to the next level, and then the next level. And then when it becomes mature, you have a lot of processes and systems that are in place, which unfortunately, as necessary as they are, can really stifle and shut down innovation. It's just a natural thing. So, having all that great and the resources behind you, I'm always saying, where are my people? But coming back to the start of life, I know it's a beautiful stage of business to be in.
It's so fun. I mean, the students at Babson are phenomenal. They're so driven and resourceful, and it's work that gets me out of bed every day, psyched to see what I'm gonna experience next. You just never know. So, I feel very lucky. I have my dream job, and I thought it was going to come later in life, and now I have it.
It is. That's so perfect. Let's say hi to Nofal. Hi, Nofal. Love the Babson program. I am mentoring a few folks from
Thank you for that.
Currently. Oh, that is so wonderful. And then my co-host, the so awesome Auntie Jack. Hi, AJ. Waving hello to you. So glad you're here. And yes, I agree. We're so grateful for all Debbie does now and has done. So now that we know all about you and have a really great understanding of what led you to this point and wanting to write the book. And folks, let me just pop that book right up on the big screen. This is Debbie's book, #1 Amazon bestseller, even during a pandemic, may I add. Winning Money, Mentors, and More for Your Startup First Pitch. It is a terrific read. I have to tell you, there's great stories in there, great advice. She just takes you on the whole journey. And it's not like you're in some heavy-duty grad school program. It's the same information, but because, look, she's a marketer, right? She's a brander. She knows how to make it a lot more interesting and compelling, and to help persuade you to have a great pitch deck. So,
yeah, I think that was one of the things that I brought to writing this book that was really unique was this marketer's perspective or this branding perspective, because marketers are in the job of persuading people to do something to change consumer behavior. And it's very true of also of people who are pitching their businesses. Your job is to persuade people to do something, whether it's to act differently or to help you or to get involved. So some of those persuasive techniques are all the same in terms of positioning and understanding your target audience and really knowing what drives people or motivates people. And the way that you present a compelling story about your startup. Stories are memorable. People love stories. And it puts your brain in this mode. When you hear a story, put your brain in this mode to really take it in and remember it. And that's one of the most important things about a great pitch, is that it's memorable.
That's right. And a lot of times too, we have to remember, just like while we're doing our customer discovery and we have our sales funnel, how do we get them in the top? And then what's the next stage? And then you close them in. It's the same thing for raising money, right, Debbie?
It absolutely is. It's very much the same thing. And, the thread that runs through all that is really understanding your audience, understanding who you're talking to, what they care about, and making sure that you connect to it in a way that's interesting to them,
Right.
Or else you're just another person that's talking at them.
So let's talk about the flow, because, a first-time founder is pulling their deck together. Of course, they've probably made the mistake by looking at Airbnb's deck and not understanding Airbnb had been around for years. This was probably the deck that everybody loves showing and looking at. It was probably maybe their 500, maybe 1,000th pitch.
Yeah.
They had it down to
really
like
long time.
words at that point. But for the first time founder, and they're pulling the deck together, what should they be thinking about? Where do they start? And then we'll talk about some of the stumbling moments that can happen, because it's like talking about your kids. You go on about them and you're not talking about, how you're raising them.
Right, exactly. Well, so one of the things I talk about in the book is I offer a framework for how your pitch should flow when you deliver it, whether you deliver it with slides or you're just talking it. And that framework is called the 4H framework. It came out of watching thousands of pitches. I've seen thousands of pitches, and it's just, what I saw was the ones that were really good kind of followed this flow pretty often. And the other thing that I found that was useful about the flow is that, I coach my students to not write a script and memorize a script when you're giving a pitch. That doesn't work well. It doesn't feel natural. So having a flow is a lot easier, because you can kind of flow your stories and connect them, and you know how it should all connect, but you're not memorizing something. You're not coming off as scripted. So the 4H's go like this. The first one is headline. The second is heart. The third one is head. And the last H is hope. And headline is about, starting your pitch off with a 5 to 9 word phrase that allows you to set the context for what you're going to be talking about. So when people sort of settle in, whether they're listening to you on a stage or listening to you across a table or online, they kind of get their head around, what you're going to be talking about. So, Andy mentioned the Airbnb deck, and everybody knows what Airbnb does. But back in 2008 and 2009, when they were pitching it for the first time, nobody knew what it was. And so their headline was book rooms with locals rather than hotels. And so by just having that headline open up their pitch, people knew they were going to be talking about travel and the travel industry and budget travel, and just a whole new way to think about connecting with locals, right? So as you are sort of drawn into this, you become curious. You're like, well, what? I want to hear more. This is really interesting, or this is my space. I like to invest in this space, or I like to mentor in this space.
And I want listeners and viewers to really take this in, because so often we get caught up in this beginning slide, and sometimes people start talking about some story that's way over here. Doesn't have anything to do with why you really are in this business. So always start with that headline. It's your chance to captivate immediately. I just wanted to throw that out, because I see that mistake all the time, and people are like, oh, that's a great story. Now what are you doing? So that is perfect. Please continue.
Okay. So then the next part is the heart section of your pitch. And the heart section is a storytelling experience. But the idea with the heart section is you're trying to create an empathetic sense of drama. So the person listening to you can really identify with the problem and why it needs to be solved. So a lot of founders tend to use the heart section to either talk about the origin story, like why they feel so compelled to solve this problem. It's usually about an individual, not in a generic way, but really about an individual. This person has this problem. We need to solve it. And, really tries to create a lot of drama around what's wrong, and why it needs to be fixed, and what's sort of leading you to spend your life's work on this. Right. The other story a lot of founders like to tell is sort of what the world will look like after their startup exists. So they might paint a picture of, how much better the world can be, once this problem is solved. And they tell that story within the context, again, of how much this problem is painful, or how much this problem is causing people to not get the best out of their lives.
Right.
So those are the two most common stories, but
right.
Really, any story that.
And I like what you just said there, and founders take this in as well, because mission is what's not working. Vision is how the world looks when you fixed it with your wonderful solution. So, and in between there is your strategy of getting from point A to point B. And that's where everything comes in: the business model, the market size, how are you going to make money, all of those things. But by sharing that vision, which is really your full-time job as a founder, you are sharing it in a way that gets the investors like, yeah, I think I might want to be part of this ride. This sounds really exciting. Yeah. If they're aligned. Okay, so what's the third H?
Well, and the thing about the heart section, I talk about a lot, and even in the third H section, is to use words that have emotion connected to them. So really think hard about the words that you're using, and try and use words that have more context to them or more emotion with them. So an example that I use in the book is the idea of the Ring doorbell. Jamie Siminoff invented the Ring doorbell. He's a Babson alum. And when he first invented the Ring doorbell, it's an online video doorbell, so you can see through your doorbell who's at your front door and talk to them from anywhere on an app on your phone. And when he first started talking about it, he went on Shark Tank, got nobody to invest, nobody cared. What do I need an online doorbell for? I'm not feeling it. But then he started to talk about it as neighborhood safety. And both of those words have so much to them, right? As soon as I say neighborhood to you, you're picturing where you live or your house or your neighbors or something that's really meaningful to you that feels like home. And as soon as I say safety to you, again, another word that has a lot of meaning to it, a lot of emotion. Oh my gosh, my family. Oh my gosh, my things. Oh my gosh, safety, my safety is really important to me. So, now he's talking about neighborhood safety and not talking about a video doorbell, and people started to really listen. People really, decided that this was something they really needed to have, and it was important. And,
sit up in their chairs. Yeah.
Yeah. He goes on to sell this company to Amazon for $1 billion. So that's not going to happen to everyone. But the idea is that, where you can paint a picture for people with your language and your word choice, you're going to be much more successful in engaging them. Another example I use in the book is using metaphors or language to bring things to life. So if I told you, hey, Andy, go run 100 yards, you'd be like, I think I know what 100 yards is. That far? I'm not sure. But if I said, hey, Andy, go run the length of a football field, you'd be like, oh, I absolutely know how long that is, and no thanks. But,
that's excellent. And remember, folks, I know you've heard this 100 times, but people buy from their emotions. It's I always like the example of, honey, I bought that Porsche because it's well made, it gets low gas mileage, and it's a German-made automobile. That's not why you bought the Porsche.
Yeah, exactly. So, and we learned this in the marketing world really early on, is that people buy for social and emotional needs, not for physical needs a lot of the time. And that's where brands come in. That's why brands matter, is because brand might fill a social or emotional need for me. So, driving a Porsche makes me feel like I'm fancy. So, and I want to feel fancy, to your example, so I'll drive a Porsche.
Exactly. I want to feel that engine under me while I'm driving and then look out the window, go, yeah, it's me. I'm in this Porsche.
Yeah.
Praise me. Thank you.
Yeah, so all those things help in sort of connecting with your audience, because that's the whole goal, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you just want them to sort of lean forward and be really interested in what you have to say and start to feel something about what you're doing.
That's right. And this,
Emotion.
tech founders, my heart, okay? I feel for you because this is a lot of times from what I see and experience, this is not your sweet spot. And I know from watching Tapple, for example, tapple.io, I think, is their website. They're a local business. He's amazing, smarty pants tech guy. He sends his CMO to the front of the room when they're pitching because she's able to just convey it. So if you have someone on your team, Debbie, is it okay? It doesn't have to be, quote, the founder pitching, does it?
It doesn't really, as long as that person is part of the founding team.
Yeah.
The reality is at the very early stages of a business, a lot of times investors and mentors are joining what you're doing because they are joining because of you, not because of the idea or equal to the idea. Who you are as a founder matters a ton in these very early stages because mentors and investors know that the idea is going to change a lot. I mean, in these early stages, you will have multiple pivots. You will change so often in terms of as you learn more and you try more things and you learn what's working and what target beachhead market really cares about you. So a lot of the time, the pitch is this opportunity for them to get to know you, to sort of see who you are, what are your values, how do you act, what are you all about? And for a lot of early stage people who get involved with startups, that's what they care about the most. They want to know the founder.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got the headline, we have the heart. What's next?
So the next section is the head, and you sort of mentioned a lot of the stuff that goes into the head just a couple minutes ago. This is a place where you're answering all the questions that the audience might have at this point. How does it work? How do you make money? Who's on your team? What competitive advantage do you have? So these very linear sort of analytical things happen in the head part of your story. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be told in an interesting way. And it doesn't mean that you just start spewing data. As soon as you start talking about data, people's brains, they automatically go into evaluation mode to decide if you're right or correct. You want to keep them in storytelling mode because that's where they're more open to what you have to say. They're not evaluating it. They're just feeling open and they're taking it in. So try to keep it storytelling going in the sense that you're using words with emotion. You're trying to really prop up your unique value proposition through everything that you're talking about, reminding people why you're different, why you're special. But you are talking about all these things that are very straightforward and answer the questions in people's minds at that time in the head section. And the head section tends to be the longest section of your pitch because there's a lot to cover there usually. So it's okay if that's the biggest section of your pitch, but you also have to just make sure that it's flowing in such a way that it keeps people engaged.
So let's just have a little conversation around that because, people tend to want to be linear and they want to just give the facts. Here are our key metrics. Here's our customer acquisition costs. Here's our, in some cases, the LTV CAC ratio, but usually most founders are like, what? But here's our projections over the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. But storytelling, again, founders, you are always having to up your skill level. I'm sorry. I mean, there really is no course for this until you start doing it. Right. And you're thinking, probably, as I have always said, storytelling? Why can't I just click, 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 and we're done? But it's really, and look, we've got some traction. What are, or this is our competitors. Look what they're doing. They're in there. What are some other ways that we can make it more interesting in that third H stage?
Well, I think, finding ways to communicate data that isn't dry and boring, but really brings the idea to life. So there's definitely places where you need to have data in your deck. Some of those metrics that you talked about, like CAC and different types of traction metrics, I talk about a lot in the book, and you do have to show some of them. But finding a way to show them in a way that might bring them to life more, might bring them make them more interesting is a really good piece of advice to do. And I think that it's also just letting it unfold for people. So it shouldn't feel choppy. That's why I talk about this idea of flow. It should kind of feel like you're taking them on a journey with you, so
Once
that,
upon a time.
yeah, I mean, you're walking them through your business, but in a way that you want them to feel it, you want them to experience it. And so how you tell this these very analytical things really matters. So take them on this journey with you, unfold it for them. You're giving them a gift of your brilliance.
Hey, whoa.
Watch them unwrap it.
Did you guys hear that? Seriously, so often we tend to be in the, could you help us out, please? No, you are a gift to them. You have done all the hard work, and don't worry, nobody's going to want to work as hard as you have. They're not going to steal your idea. And, you are providing them an opportunity, because, especially with the seed investors, it can be a very emotional buy for them, because they want to be part of this exciting journey. And if they know something about your industry, they can see how they can help get you there. And it's a wonderful feeling, right, Debbie?
That's an excellent point, Andy. And I talk about this many times in the book. I talk about the idea that pitching is personal, and it really is. It's such a personal experience. And if you are pitching to an angel investor, they really are thinking about how they can contribute to their business, because for the most part, angel investors want to contribute money, sure, but they also want to contribute their time and expertise, and that's why they're doing it. So call out ways that they can be helpful to you and in doing so, you're showing that you know who they are too. You know what their expertise and you know what they bring to the table, which shows that you've done your homework and that you really value who they are, not just for their money, but for what they can bring to the table. So, if there are ways to modify some of these sections, that you can really use that as an opportunity to show an investor or a mentor that you understand what their perspective is and where they're coming from and how that will help you. That's a really, really great way to start building that important relationship that you'll have with an angel investor or a mentor who comes in really early.
Building rapport. That's what it's all about. Okay, so what's the fourth H?
So the fourth H is hope. And hope is your big finish. This is where you're inviting them to join you on the journey. It's sort of those imagine if statements where, imagine if if travel is transformed. So here we are back on Airbnb. Imagine if travel is transformed because you can stay with a local and have a completely different experience when you travel. And as a result, the world becomes a more connected place. So it's this big idea. So a lot of times it's not exactly what you're working on right now, but it's this sort of bigger vision of how the world can be transformed because your idea exists. And the whole point of that section is to get people excited to ask a question or to raise their hand or to offer you something that will be helpful to you. So you're trying to paint this picture of, an exciting road to travel and inviting people along with you. And that's what the hope section really is all about.
I love it. Those are the best 4-H's I've ever seen and heard of. And
it's really simple too, because the idea is that, what's in each of your 4-H's is up to you. You make it work for you, because the most important thing is that you come across as authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
So don't try and be something you're not in the pitch, because it'll eventually come out. And you just want to show who you are.
Oh my gosh, we have a few questions in the audience. So I'm going to bring them in before we go to our next topic. First of all, just to say hi again. Thank you, Eric Holiday, for tuning in. So great. Purpose, vision, strategies, and tactics. There you go. And then we have Cynthia Faye. She loves the 4-H's. Look at, she's on a horse. That's perfect. Taylor has a question. What are the key facts and statistics you would prioritize telling in your pitch?
Well, certainly there are some market trend data that you have to include. So why do you think this is a big opportunity, and what trends are telling you that right now is the time for it? So we were talking about timing earlier in our conversation. You have to convince mentors and advisors and investors why this is right now is the time for this. And that includes, trend data. It includes demographic data, it includes psychographic data. So trying to work a few of those types of facts and statistics in is really helpful, as well as, and related, is the size of the market you hope to serve. Particularly for later stage investors like venture capitalists, they want to know that it is a 10x opportunity that you're talking about. You can get some early stage investors who don't need that. But either way, you have to explain in your pitch for sure who your target market is and how big that segment of the market is, according to your research. So that's a really other important piece of fact that you should bring to the table.
And I think too, my personal experience, and you talk about this as well, as emphasizing the team. You've seen so many slides where they have the team at the end. Who told you to do the team at the end, everybody? This is the main reason why someone is investing in you. It's you. What's your background? Who's on your team? Then you can go into, and this is how we're going to execute and implement, and bring in those numbers that are so important. And I know it's a tough thing to calculate, especially early on, but you really have to understand what it's going to cost you to bring customers on board, and will they be sticking around? And if so, what's the lifetime value? Really understanding those numbers will help you not have false readings about your business, so that you're making your marketing investments wisely, or at least experimenting until you can make them wisely.
Right. And the idea there is, things like cost of customer acquisition are really important metrics. And it's almost always the first question out of an investor's mouth if you haven't addressed it in the presentation. They do want to know how you're going to go to market, and they do want to know how you think you're going to get people to care. But the point to not get hung up on is being perfect about it, because in reality, that investor or that mentor or advisor is really just looking for how you think about it.
That's right.
So know that it's okay that it might change, it might be different, but what you're doing there is you have a real opportunity to show how you think. And that's what they're looking for. They're really trying to understand, are you being thoughtful about this in the right way? And so a lot of people get hung up like, I don't think this is exactly right, and I'm not really sure if I know this. It's okay. Just think about it in the smartest way possible, put it out there, and get some feedback. I mean, they may have some really good ideas for you that you haven't even thought of yet. And that's an opportunity for a conversation. And as soon as you get into a conversation, you're in. Like, that's great. That's where you want to be.
Right. Oh, something? Tell me, and then the investor will be thrilled to share that.
Exactly.
And, and you're absolutely right. This is where they're seeing how you process the information. And are you not just in love with your product?
Are you being realistic about it? I can't tell you how many times I've seen a pitch where they say their source of revenue is advertising. And it's like, immediately when they say that, the only way your primary source of revenue being advertising ever works is if you have massive scale. And to attain massive scale, you've usually got to have a lot of money or something that will easily go viral. And most people don't have that.
When we brought up Eric's comment about purpose, Maxwell, you are absolutely right. Purpose is so important because you're going to go through some really hard times as a founder. So you have to have a reason why you want to keep going through sometimes the death valley of your business to get to the other side. And having purpose is a really good thing. Hey, Karen, how you doing? I'm so glad. Karen's been rocking her business, Keezy's, for a while, and she just keeps going into one category and then finding another customer segment. And gosh,
that's how it goes.
Your dedication, Karen, is amazing. And she's a nurse while she's doing, and a mom. So I tell you, hats off to you. Tiara tip. I think Nofal had a question up here I wanted to bring up, but because it was around COVID. Your tip for the startups that were about to launch and were targeted to colleges and universities adapt to the COVID situations. I'm not sure what that means or what you're saying there, Nofal, so I might have you come back. Maybe it's just saying you like that tip. Okay, and a quick hello. I just saw, there we go. Hi, Delma. So glad you're tuning in from Brazil. That's wonderful. Stay home, stay safe, okay? Whew, tough times. Um, let's talk about something that is very important when we're raising money, especially for women and people of color. And we see it all the time. It's an unconscious bias. Yes, we're doing our best to raise people's level of consciousness, but there is, for some of us, obvious misogyny and racism when we're in front of the room and some of the questions. And I have a female founder client who, she actually had to report the investor because she
Oh
just,
my gosh.
it was just wrong. And what had went, and it was in a group, but the comments were wrong and out of line. And so not only was it uncomfortable for her to have to deal with it in the moment, but it was uncomfortable, like being in front of all these people pitching and dealing with that at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah.
And so this is something you talk about as well. How can we
Yeah.
get back, and how
Well,
can we help, or how do we get through those uncomfortable moments as our world evolves?
yeah, it's unfortunate. The entrepreneurial process does have a lot of bias in it today. And I like to believe that a lot of it is subconscious, but it is there, and the data speaks to it quite clearly. We know that only 2% of venture funding goes to women in the United States, but 38% of the businesses in the US are owned by women. And we know that Black founders make up 1% of venture funded startups, but they're 13% of the population in the US. So we know that there's something going on here, and it's not great. And, one of the ways that we know this could get better is if we had more people of color who were investors and women who are investors. Our research at Babson tells us that, if you have an investor that's a woman or have a woman partner in an investment firm, they are way more likely to invest in a woman than a firm that is all men. And it's a concept called homophily, and it's a sociological phenomenon where, people want to invest or hire people who are like them. So when someone walks in the room who isn't like them from appearance sake, whether it's their skin color or their gender, they have this sense that, like, this isn't what I expected. So then they don't ascribe the same types of capabilities to that person. And we know that the stereotype for the entrepreneur is the white male in a hoodie, and that's jarring to the investor or the advisor, because I'm sure it's subconscious because it happens to women investors too. So it's something that you need to be aware of. And what I try to do is to talk about confronting bias and then switching it. So the idea is that you spot it and then you try to do something to turn the conversation in a way that is unbiased or make the most of why you're being biased against. So here's a couple of examples. So sometimes you're in a situation where like is attracted to like. We know this. So try to demonstrate in the pitch the advantage you have because you're not like everyone else. Try to use your point of difference as a competitive advantage to why this business is going to succeed or why you have unique insight on this market that's going to help you win. The other thing I hear a lot from women founders is this idea, if you're solving a uniquely feminine problem, or for Black and Brown founders, if you're solving a problem that's, particular to your culture or your community, there are many skincare companies and baby care companies, and personal care companies that are for a very specific targeted group that probably isn't who you're pitching to in your meeting. So you need to showcase the opportunity. You need to take the focus off on how specialized this market is and put it in the context of numbers, like how big this market is, how the opportunity is now. the other thing that a lot of women say to me is they get these lifestyle comments in a pitch where they'll say something about them, being a mom or being wanting to be a mom someday, and how are you possibly going to do it all, and how can you make this startup your first priority if you're a mom? Well, for me, that's like an easy one, because then you just go into badass mom mode and you start telling them why moms make the best entrepreneurs, because they do more before 8 a.m. than most people do all day.
Right.
So like turn it around and acknowledge, yeah, this is what makes me different, but this is why I'm going to win. So there's this study.
Okay, wait a minute. I love those. Before you tell the study, yes, that could be going on, but this is why I'm going to win. Okay, go ahead. Tell me about the story.
Well, so there's this really well-known study in the community that talks about prevention questions and promotion questions, and this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just get. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So it turns out that a prevention question is like, how are you going to mitigate risk? How are you not going to lose? And a promotion question is a question about growth and opportunity and how you're going to win. So who would you rather invest in, a not loser or a winner? Most people would want to invest in the winner. And so it turns out this study identified the fact that men most often get asked promotion questions in the Q&A section of their pitch, and women most often get asked a prevention question in their Q&A. And when you look through the data for this study, it turns out that the people who are asked mainly promotion questions raise on average 7 times more money than those who are asked mainly prevention questions. So, obviously this is a really big problem. And when you're asked a prevention question, you're more likely to answer with a prevention question. So you're kind of confirming that question was okay. So what you want to do is, if you want to get good at spotting prevention questions, and one way to do that is just to watch a lot of Shark Tank, because they do it all the time. But watching any type of pitch competition, you can start to identify a prevention question versus a promotion question. And I have a whole list of them in my book, and you can also find them online, because this is a commonly cited study. But the idea is to take, if you get a prevention question, like, what are your tactical plans to stave off doom? How are you going to manage the risk? Try to flip it to a promotion answer. So the idea is, try to make it about how you're going to grow the business, how you're going to attract a new market, and make it more about opportunity. And I think that ends up being really a great way to show that you're really in control of your business, you really understand it, and you're not gonna just take what's given to you in a Q&A section, because it's inherently biased. So you need to switch it, spot it and switch it.
Spot it and switch it, because unfortunately it's going to be a meritocracy out there for a while, not a meritocracy, but we're doing well. And I think your advice is outstanding. Again, you will find all these details in, hold on, let me bring it up. Ta-da! First Pitch, available now on Amazon.
You're so good at this. Can you just follow me around?
Absolutely. But come on, don't you want to know how to get the investors out of the weeds too? I mean, this is it, really promotion, prevention questions, but also sometimes you've got a competition of people investors in the group wanting to show you how much they know. And so, you've got to go, praise you like I should, and then bring them back to.
Right. Yeah. The thing I hear a lot is like, sometimes with feminine products or specialty products, the investor might say something like, oh, well, I don't really understand this market. Let me go talk to my wife. I'll get back to you. And what I would say in that situation is like, great, definitely go talk to your wife. But let me first tell you about how big this opportunity is, and then just launch into all the great things that you're building and why. So acknowledge that, like, great, good, go talk to your wife, because she's going to tell you it's a problem. I know it's a problem.
Yes. And they're clueless, which is fine. But the bottom line is this is how we're going to make money. This is how we're going to market.
This is a huge opportunity. You are going to make huge bank. You should keep listening to me.
Keep listening to me, because at the end of the day, it's my ability to execute and implement. So I'm going to go first, put in links to connect with Debi on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and those of you on YouTube, it won't take the link. You'll see them in the show notes later, okay? And also for first pitch. So you can find it and get it, because you're going to want to have this advice with you, like right next to you, because you'll be much more successful. AJ has a quick one here for your book. What are some things founders can expect in the word more?
I love that question.
Oh, AJ.
Thanks, AJ.
Go.
Well, so this is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, because people forget that there are far more people involved in making your startup successful than just mentors and investors. You need first customers, you need maybe partners or vendors or PR. You need all those things to be successful. It really takes a village to run a startup. So you really need to be able to talk about your startup in a clear and compelling way to all kinds of people. And so the more, and there's a whole chapter on the more in the book, is the more is, influencers in your market. They have a huge ability to bring people to you if they like what you're doing. So you need to pitch to them, and you need to get them excited about what you're working on so that they want to work with you. Or public relations, you need to be pitching media people all the time. But how do you do that in a way that the media person is going to care about you? They get pitched all the time. They don't want you to send them a press release, and if you do, they're just going to throw it in the trash. They want you to understand who they are, what they care about, and why you can be useful to them first, and then you can pitch your startup. Same thing with your first customers. You have people using this product early on. Go talk to them. Find out why they're using it. You might find out that you set out to hit the college student and you're actually getting the yoga moms. So that's really important information to know. And when you get people really passionate about your company in the early stages, they can act as amplifiers of your message. So they're also really, really valuable.
Oh, so good. And then for those of you as in the food or some type of manufacturing industry, you need to get yourself in the slot of a popular manufacturer, a co-packer. So you've got to be able to persuade them too, as a startup, why they should go with you versus a tried and true company or one of the competitors.
Excellent point.
Thank you, AJ. And here's another great question from Maxwell. Debbie, I really appreciate you covering homophily in business. I love the idea of leveraging your difference and uniqueness to keep the conversation going, despite being unfairly challenged. And if they can't get over their biases, then they do not deserve the gifts that you are.
I totally agree. Sometimes you just got to walk away because it's not worth your energy, because you're not going to change their mind.
Oh, yeah.
That is so true. And their loss, because you are a gift.
Yes. See, everything is framing things up. That's a branding frame. It's a gift. I love this. I'm just checking to see if we have anything else. Oh, I know. Okay, so we're going to swing back to No Fall. Startups depended on the business model that hinged on students being back on campus physically. How to adapt or accommodate. Thanks, No Fall.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of businesses that are, that will not make it out of this pandemic because they can't change their business model to adapt to students not being on campus. And the fact is that you just have to adapt the business model. You can't just keep going forward assuming that that's going to change anytime soon. You have to figure out a different way. And I think that's going to happen in a lot of different spaces. Like the pandemic really has changed a lot of people's business model, but if you can show why you're pivoting into this new business model because of it, investors are going to be super psyched, because they're going to see how you think, and they're going to realize that you understand how the trends are going and that you need to adapt. So you have to adapt, and you have to find a way to create a new business model that takes advantage of and will flourish in this new world that we're experiencing. Without a doubt, you just can't keep proceeding like it's going to be over in a couple of months, because it's not.
Have you seen the new car commercial? Oh my gosh. So, I mean, it's so relevant for right now. And of course, you're probably like me, Debbie, you watch what the big brands are doing, right? And how they're adjusting in a time of a pandemic. So there's this really great couple, and they're on their iPad, and they want to buy a new car, but they're not going to go and test drive. So they get the car dealer like, okay, Joe.
I've seen this.
Okay, can you go in here? Can you open up the trunk? Oh, yeah, that's great. Thinking it's really, really funny. It's a lot of fun. Here you go. Yay, Diane.
Oh, good. Thanks, Diane.
That's awesome. And thanks, Delma. Oh, that's
There's
so good.
tons more info in the book. Like, honestly, it's jam packed with stuff, and it is really for early stage founders. It's really, while I say it's a one-on-one, it's a beginner's book. There's a lot of really good concepts in there, and there are tons of stories, mostly from my students that I've worked with over time, and you can really learn from their experiences in starting their companies. There's some really good stories in there. I wish I could tell more stories now because I have so many, but I know we're running out of time.
It's great. And Cynthia, yay.
Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome, No Fall. He was an expert at Founders Live last month, one of my favorite mentors out there. Okay, everybody, I'm just going to say a few words. I just have to tell you, I'm so grateful everyone tuned in. I mean, did we learn a ton from Debi? I mean, come on. I know you upped your game. I know I upped my game. And the fact is, as founders, we have a lot of work ahead of us. That's why I'm always saying Startup Life is the best personal development program out there, right? Because I have to become a persuader too. Yes, you do. You have to. It's giving life and oxygen to your business. I'm genuinely grateful that you carved out the time. And archive viewers, I'm thrilled you tuned in too. What other topics do you want to learn about for your startup journey? What do you need? Some cash flow, some talent acquisition, HR compliance, marketing? Do you have a favorite expert you'd like me to interview? Someone as delicious as Debi has been for us today. Or, please pop your thoughts and comments into the comment section. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll definitely be following up. And of course, if you have more questions for Debi or me, or like to continue the conversation, again, shoot me an email, Andy@AndyLyons, or leave the comment in the threads wherever you're hanging out. And for those of you watching on YouTube, thank you for clicking the subscribe button and that little bell, because that little bell will notify you anytime I post a new video. So let me just bring in a little something here so we can all know how to stick together, right, folks? I would love for you to subscribe to my monthly newsletter, Let's Stick Together, because A, a new business doesn't come with instructions, and B, it takes a village to raise a business. So, having that help, not just from the monthly newsletter, but from these live shows, as well as coaching. I'm here all the time, ready to help you and your startup succeed.
Such a great coach.
Aww.
You got it all.
Hey, let's bring that in again. Say that one time.
Amazing coach.
Thank you. The saying goes, coach me and I'll learn, and support me and I'll grow, but really believe in me and I'll win. That's the big thing that I bring.
I like that.
Is that I believe in your capability. We will dig deep. We will find what you need to know, introduce you to whoever you need to know to help you win with your business. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the folks before we grab a few more comments and say goodbye?
From me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, I guess one thing we didn't get to, but
oh yes, get to it.
It was just the idea around being coachable. So people really want investors and mentors. They really want you to take their feedback and value it. You don't have to do every piece of feedback that you get. You don't have to implement it. You don't have to change what you're doing, but you do have to value it. So just remember, when people offer you feedback and advice, value it for what it is, and then you as the founder decide what's right for your business. And that's a skill that you'll develop over time. But as a founder, you really need to know what feedback you care to implement and what you don't, but always value what you're given.
Now, if you ever watch The Voice or American Idol, it's key.
Yeah, I mean, relationships are everything in this business. I can't say it enough. Pitching is personal. All of this is really about building relationships. I often start my presentation with, I wrote a book on pitching. Oh, no, I didn't. I wrote a book on building relationships. And that's the truth.
Beautiful. Okay. A marketing branding genius got us. Okay, everyone. Woo! I want to say that next Wednesday, July 22nd at 1 p.m. right here, we've got the more marketing coming on board with the marketing maven to small business owners. B2B, how to find those B2B customers. Oh, it's Vicki O'Neill, and she's going to bring us actionable advice for creating the best branded messaging to connect, build those relationships with your ideal customers. So be sure to join my meetup group. Just go to bit.ly/Startup Life Live, and I'll have that in the show notes as well. So you can always be alerted there whenever I have a new event coming on. I'm going to be doing a lot more. I'm going to be going about twice a week, maybe even more. So I'm excited about seeing everybody and doing live streaming and connecting. And let's just do a quick round through the group here. Yay, Maxwell. I'm so glad it's been helpful. And Eunice, she's coming. I think you're the one who's coming back to Boston, right? I don't know. I think so, though. And Cynthia, oh, great, great, great. You are very welcome. And Natalia, my marketing coordinator from the Hult School of Business MBA program. And thank you, Maxwell, for your participation. That was wonderful. And Tom, good to see you from the startup community here and Boston New Technology. Yay. All right, everyone. Oh, and Tim. Thanks for tuning in from Milwaukee, Tim Tesh. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Debbie. This has been
had fun.
Wonderful. They were great stories, great advice, so many sound bites. We'll be, I know I'll be sharing this forever. And everybody who's tuning in, especially you hardworking founders, whether you're side hustling or doing this full time, please know, stay focused and keep going. And remember, you've got this. Remember that fourth H, hope. You've got this. All right, everyone. See you next time. Bye. Mwah.
Bye. Thanks, Andy. This was so fun.
Oh, good.